Welcome everyone, Gerard Scarpese, craft hairdresser and co-founder of the Hairbrain community, today with my very special guest, one of my best friends, Ricardo Diniz, who is the global haircutting director for Aveda, quite a prestigious role. This is a beautiful model, is it Janice?
Yes.
Beautiful model Janice, you can see she's got beautifully textured hair. And if you know Ricardo's Instagram, he's put out some incredible photos of Janice over the past couple of years, so you can kind of see how he crafts some of those shapes. He's already sectioned off and into the haircut, so Ricardo, tell us what you have planned for us
Yeah,
today.
I mean, Janice is a super interesting character, so I think I've always been sort of inspired by sort of her personality. She's a musician. I think she works in a tattoo parlor and she does piercings, and she's constantly getting stopped in New York because of her look.
You got all the good jobs.
Yeah, she's got all that stuff. And she was actually passed to me by a really great hairdresser named Erin Johnson. And I was really lucky enough to meet her and sort of get her in my chair and really start to work with her curls and her look. And the cut is kind of like, it's a simple cut because it's not requiring a lot of sections. And generally the way I like to approach curls is with a much more sort of emphasis on silhouette and profile. And then trying to sort of break that silhouette so it doesn't always become the sort of typical uniform sort of rounder shape.
So I can see you already started kind of putting your guideline. Is this going to be a graduated technique? Is it more layered?
Well,
is it a combination?
Yeah, it's absolutely a combination. So I'm actually working with some graduation through the back right now, only because one of the things I love about curls is different with straighter hair is the expansion that you can get through profile. So I love the idea that generally with like straighter and more static hair, you generally have this sort of like tipping point on where you can get that balance to be sort of right in the profile. And I find with curls, because there's no official line that runs from the back, it's all diffused, you're able to sort of take the back up much higher and sort of stretch out the profile sort of this way, which I think is very interesting.
Balance, yeah. Everyone's excited to see you get the cut started. I've got some shout outs here.
Sorry.
Our buddy Steve Statland is watching. Always a pleasure to have you here. We've got Bartak watching from Poland. Hey guys, let us know where you're watching from around the world. We're in New York City today, broadcasting live from our home studio here, Blonde Studio in New York City. Albie Mulcahy's watching. Great to have legendary Albie joining us. Got some love coming in from Red Hook, Brooklyn. Hey, I live in Carroll Gardens, very close to Red Hook, Brooklyn, Amy. Great to have you. Sally Rogerson and Wendy Pryor is watching. So great to have you here. Wendy's excited. She says this is one of the best looks. She can't wait to see it.
Awesome.
So guys, if you have technical questions, Ricardo, not only is he a creative hairdresser, he's an educator, a true educator, over 20 years of teaching and sharing, technical educating. So this is a great time for questions. I know there's lots of questions about technical approaches on curly hair. So I'll be looking out for your questions. So just type them in and I'll share them with Ricardo.
Okay, so this is sort of a much more leaner approach to graduation, especially with curls. I think that the biggest fear that even I always have is generally to deal with like shrinkage and the curl factor. So, just getting that out of the way, having, Janice here, I don't want to call her Soul Thunder because that's her Instagram, but having Janice here, again, she is super open. She wears it curly, as a lot of people do in New York. So again, this is a look that is mainly to bring out the texture and to sort of make it cool. It's kind of why she gets stopped on the street. And so the approach, again, is to, instead of starting at the bottom and sort of relying on a lot of the weight through the top, to sort of anchor and weigh the shape down, I'm kind of trying to do the opposite. I kind of want expansion through the top. I want expansion through the sides. And I want some shrinkage happening through the back area here. So I'm starting off with some graduation, but as I work towards the front, I'm now starting to transition into some layering. And this is always an amazing spot, in the hairline, because this is essentially the bridge between the back and the front. And this area right here, because of the inconsistency in the hairline, really allows you to kind of like adjust and make up your technique in a way. So what I'm going to start to do now is actually kind of go from that sort of graduated angle, but now as I start to get in towards this bottom, I'm going to kind of start to depart from the existing outline that I have in order to start to create some softness here and allow the curl to sort of almost expand and sort of sit around her face there.
So I know, Ricardo, obviously I'm very familiar with your cutting technique, and we've worked together for many years. And what I love is the way you kind of take classic or core concepts and kind of adapt them and evolve them,
Yeah.
which is what's happening here. You're
Yeah.
not like reinventing the wheel,
No.
you're just giving it a little twist to
Yeah.
the left or a twist to the right.
Well, that to me is what creativity is. It's always a sort of connecting point onto something that I've done before. In fact, I started off, I guess, my creative kind of thought, thinking, brain pattern, whatever it is, more in just music, and it came from just being a really bad guitar player and mixing chords back and forth. And so when I started getting into hair, and I remember in those very first years, I didn't know how to make something up, so I just combined. And I've got this class right now that I've just launched. It's called Core Creative, and it's really about the thought process of creativity, how you get started, and kind of what's the whole mystery behind it. So it's not some like special gift that God gave to only a few hairdressers or people. It's really about your thought process, you thinking about things, taking screenshots, journaling, writing things down. And really a creative person is just someone who's connecting with ideas, and thinking about them, I think, more so than you.
So Core Creative sounds like a great class. If somebody's watching, and I know you got a lot of fans
Yeah.
watching, sharing a lot of love, and they want to take that class, how do they find out about it, and what can they expect when they take the class?
Well, it's a class that's being offered in our network, and it's being taught by a series of professionals that have been certified to teach this class. We have this website called Aveda. It's www.purepro, aveda.purepro. And on that website, basically, you can there's a whole range of things that artists and hairdressers can go and have a look at. But it does show you where the classes are happening, as well as other classes as well. Okay, so what I'm doing now is you've started to sort of see me switch my approach, especially with my hand position, where I'm sort of working from palm to palm, which is just really giving me the greatest amount of control through the back part of the head. And now as I start to work in through the sides, I want to make sure that there's this layer that carries in through this area, through the parietal ridge, as well as maintain some of the length that she's got through the bottom. So the approach, again, is to kind of carry that shorter guideline through the back in towards the front, but then manipulate the bottom sections as you over-direct them back to connect them with your guide. I hope that makes sense. It's
Totally makes sense.
A lot of jargon there.
Gonna give some shout outs to our friends watching. Gianni, thanks for sharing the love. Milo Maximovic, great to have you with us as always. Baby Mendoza says, looking gorgeous already. Question, Ricardo, when separating the top from the bottom, how do you know how high or how low? I guess this is kind of like a horseshoe shape on the top, maybe a little bit pointier in the crown.
Yeah.
But how do you position that? Does it affect the cut?
Absolutely. I when I'm sectioning a haircut, I try to look at the haircut like I would dress the body, so to speak. And so, depending on the outfit or the cut that you're putting on the person's head, the parietal ridge can act a lot like the waist of the body. And depending on how top heavy the section is, so again, like if I took the section and I just dropped it below the ridge, what you're immediately going to find is that the top area is going to sit much heavier and have a little more of like a static feel to it. Was when you start to come, in and around or even above, what you're helping to do is, you're allowing the foundation to come up higher, almost like you're dragging your sort of pant upward and allowing the sort of t-shirt or the shirt part to be much smaller. And so what happens is it tends to move a lot more. So when you're thinking about the section angle, one of the things that you can play with is if you see like a curl pattern happening through the front part of someone's face and you really like that and you're just possibly starting on some disconnection or you want an easy disconnection for your guests, this is probably the easiest way to go, is to sort of think about, wait, I got a curl pattern, it's a little lower here, I'll section this area a little lower, bring this side up so that I'm putting more emphasis on that parting. That's a good way, I think, of approaching and thinking about the ridge as kind of like a pinpoint of where you would like the top and how you would like that movement to sit. I hope I answered that question for you.
Absolutely, thank you. So, can you talk a little bit about tension when working on curly hair like this? Some people prefer to work
Totally.
on dry hair with no tension whatsoever. It looks like you're working on damp hair. Can you
Yep.
tell us your thinking?
So I believe in tension. I think that I think you have to use the approach, and you're just going to fight the tension there. Thank you. You just have to use the approach that I think works for you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's you behind the chair with that guest. I think what makes it right is generally what you're doing in that moment. But if we want to talk a little bit about like the stretch, inconsistency, and curl pattern, to me, part of the process of why we wet the hair down is really to provide more consistency to the curl. Now, this is my personal opinion, so don't start getting all the hate comments coming at me. But I think that a curl needs to be approached like in all haircuts, both wet and dry. I think the drying process is an important process because you get to see, the final result, and you kind of get to see what's actually happening. But to put in that shape, to know that it's going to be consistent, that she can wear it different ways, it's kind of sometimes even just for sanity's sake. I need to go through it wet. I need to stretch that hair out, and I need to provide as much consistency in my technique as possible. So you can even see that, this is not a freehand approach for me here, even though, this is not going to be showing like perfect levels of graduation. The whole thing is going to soften and diffuse. So, again, it's just, about providing a really consistent, strong technique.
Beverly Scott is wondering about the sections. Are they pie sections, or are they parallel vertical
Just
sections?
Parallel, they're vertical, and then basically as they start to approach the round of the head, they start to look and appear more diagonal as they work forward.
Is that kind of where you change the cutting angle more?
Exactly. Once we get to sort of right here, we now start to add more of that sort of weight through the bottom.
I noticed you changed hand positions a
Yeah.
little bit too, through the top.
It's more for control. If you think about, the use of your hands as well as your elbows, anytime, you're using them, your body naturally gravitates towards using what's going to be the most consistent and the easiest for your hands. So think about how your elbows and your shoulders inhibit certain amounts of lift. So, when we're working on top of our fingers, we're able to lift much higher. And when we're working palm to palm, our elbows and our shoulders really help with dragging those sections down. So I love using that more for, saving and retaining length through the top like I did through the back.
So, Ricardo, I know that you alluded earlier to the new Core Creative class, and you mentioned that there's a team that you're training. Can you talk a little bit about the team of people you're training out there?
Yeah, so first off, one of the great opportunities at Aveda is to become a teacher. And we have a network of teachers both in cutting, in color, in spa, in makeup, in styling. And so it really they're kind of like our army or our force out there, making sure that our salons receive the best education possible. So part of my job is to sort of go out, teach classes, test those classes, and certify other people to then teach those classes as well. And they're people just like you and me out there. Some of them are super experienced. Other people are in the beginning parts of the career. They're young stars. They're hungry. They're talented. Having a lot of fun like we did.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I love about my tenure at Aveda was how much we were able to share with the network and the professionals. And I know now there's the artistic teams that's growing.
Yeah, there's a North American artistic team now.
That's a big part of that it's what's behind the product, which I love. And again, thank you, Aveda, for the continued support and for bringing great educators like Ricardo into the hair brain world so that we can share. Lots of love coming in, Ricardo. Valentino Batista, very excited to see curly hair. So rare to see someone cut curly hair. Yeah, why do you think that is that people are challenged by working with curly hair, Ricardo?
That's a tough question. I don't know. I kind of.
Well, what are some of your? How about this? What are some of your own challenges with cutting curly hair?
I think it was just fear factor, and I think I don't look at it like a foreign substance. I think sometimes people can make curls like they're like from another planet, and I kind of just see
I mean,
it
you
as
really just
being-
kind of take into the fact the shrinkage
yeah, I just
factor,
think it's
right?
like I just have never looked at hair as being sort of like a one source material. So even the categories for me, I'm like, it's never just straight, it's never
Mm-hmm.
just wavy, it's never just curly. So
It's usually a combination of things.
yeah, and I think what I was based in Toronto, and Canada is originally where I'm from, and we were super multicultural there. So I was kind of lucky to always have, a very multicultural base. Curls were never that foreign. I'm Portuguese. I've got curly hair myself, so you know what I mean.
Is that what
can
you call
relate
that?
to you can
Mom? Curly
you can
hair?
relate to I won't tell you what term I use for the texture of my hair.
All right, so moving on to the top, you've dropped down your horseshoe. The
Yeah,
top
so
shape.
now what I'm going to do, and I love approaching the top like this, and this sectioning pattern and approach is actually from one of our looks in Core Creative, which is this really cool, efficient layered bob that we teach you to do. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just pull that curl back just to sort of stretch the guideline out a little bit. All
So
right.
deliberately
Yeah,
pulling.
just pulling
again,
it up.
using tension, but you really have to compensate. You have to know how much it's
yeah,
going.
it's like I know it's going to shrink up a bit. So, I know this is like way too long here. And so what's happening with the top of Janice's head is just that it's just flopping down this way. And so we want to create a little bit of lift here. So we're just going to come through. We are going to work from short to long. Right? And then she's got a shorter fringe in the front area that we're not going to connect with. So you can kind of see that one bit already dropping away. And I approach the top, I feel like my scissor is becoming softer, like even as I cut it, even the way I pull it, because I feel like I'm in a really, this is an important part. So as I look at the curl, I'm like, yeah, you gotta go.
But using the same tension,
Same tension.
but just kind of overextending it
a
more.
little
Yeah.
bit, treating it like a sculpture in a bit, and just kind of claying it, just pushing the material around a little bit.
I know you've cut Janice's hair many times, so you've
Yeah.
kind of got to know its
Yeah,
quirks.
totally.
But if someone's approaching curly hair for the first time,
Think longer.
take longer. Yeah,
Think longer. Seriously, think longer.
literally.
Yeah, just like in your brain, just kind of go, right, I'm just going to stretch this out. Because I think the surprise factor of having it sort of shrink down and it going shorter than you expected is the scary part. I think even the first time I remember cutting her hair, I was sort of concerned that I was taking it too short. So you have that thought, everyone's got that insecure voice in your brain that she's going to hate it.
I think again with I haven't cut Janice's hair, but when I look at it, it doesn't look like the kind of hair that shrinks a ton. Because it's got a coarseness and a weight to it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it shrinks, but there's some hair that's like more delicate where you can cut an inch off and it looks 6 inches shorter.
Yeah. You'll see with one of the styling things I like to do with her hair is to pack the curl as much as possible, so it does make it look extremely short. And then I just blast it with cold air to sort of get that sort of expansion.
So dry it down tight
Yeah.
and then shake it out.
Exactly.
It's like a set. Get a nice set into the curl.
So right now there's a disconnected panel that's happening through here. And again, what I love about this is we're eliminating the back and sort of just flattening and shortening up and just allowing all the shape to sort of sit around her face. And I think you'll really like it when you see it at the end, because, and again, you could approach her hair like sometimes I want to go super strong, sometimes I just want to leave it soft, but again, so I'm going to approach the second side, and what you won't see me doing is actually standing on that second side. I'm just going to lean her over this way and then approach it from here, because it'll be much easier.
Well, to get started, Ricardo, I want to welcome everyone that's just joining us. I know we have lots of viewers just joining. I'm Gerard Scarpese, co-founder of the Hairbrain community. I'm here in New York City at our home studio, Blonde Studio, working with my good friend Ricardo Dennis and his beautiful model Janice. He's sharing, really, I think what your whole ethos is core creative. I mean, you're a very fun foundational cutter, and I mean that with all respect. Clean, simple shapes, but then you combine them and juxtapose them to make things original. And I know we're talking that is a class that you're sharing out in the Aveda network. So can you talk a little bit about the class? What do people expect if they come and take it? Is it a hands-on? Is it all demonstration?
Well, it's creative. So it's a class that's based off of creativity behind the chair. So one is a little bit of like an exploration on like what is creativity, and we kind of break that down a little bit about how to get yourself started, especially with Instagram right now, and everybody's sort of equipped with a camera. And then we've got 3 specific haircuts, and one of them is this really cool star pattern shag layered cut. And all 3 haircuts sort of form the basis for the essentials of creative looks, or combining patterns, hand positions, and body positions, as well as techniques that are super important for you to know behind the chair. And I think it's kind of a class that I wrote thinking, what happens when someone finishes their classic training, they know a bob, they know some graduation, they get in front of a client, and the client shows them a picture that doesn't look like anything they just learned in school. So that class is great for people who are just starting out with some experience, as well as people who've been in the industry for a long time and just want to learn some cool sectioning patterns. And this is really great. I'm kind of showing people how I do like super straight bobs, and the tricks in cutting hair.
The tips and tricks of a
Yeah,
master.
I mean,
Can you talk about, again, obviously you can recap the haircut for everyone joining, but talk about your role at Aveda. I know, I don't know how long it's been, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you became the
More
global,
now.
is it longer than that? Global
started
creative director for
2010 now,
haircutting.
yeah.
What does that mean? You know, what does that mean for you, and what's your daily work like?
well, I'm super blessed. My daily work tends to, I want to say it kind of switches weekly in a way, even though it's always focused around education. Weekends generally mean getting on a plane somewhere, going somewhere to teach. There's also weeks that I'm booked to do shoots, come up with concepts and ideas, write new classes, certify people.
Sounds
work
like
on
a
some
dream
Instagram,
come
do
true.
some It's actually is a really dream job. There's some obvious parts that's never the fun part, but that's just the way it goes in all work. So.
All right, what's happening here? I think this
Okay,
is
so I'm
important.
just going to, I don't want to connect, but I want to just alleviate just some of the weight. So I'm just going in just with the sort of like little sort of slide technique through the top here. I am taking my sections on a bias here.
So when you say a bias, what does that mean, and
Yeah,
what's
so
the benefit?
So the bias is just really taking sections diagonally that are going to end up crisscrossing. And as we spoke about creating some movement through the top and not taking it too low, the bias just sort of helps to, I guess, allow the section to sort of wrap around the head. It also creates some longer length through the top part of the head. I'm using this more as a way of diffusing this corner that I've created between the 2 areas. But it's a lovely technique to use on straighter hair, and almost like connecting any sort of disconnected top as I'm sometimes just approaching it with the bias.
Your buddy who you mentioned earlier is watching, Aaron Johnson.
Oh,
If you
my
want to give
good
Aaron a
friend.
shout out,
Absolutely. I love Aaron.
say hi, Janice.
You know,
Hi, Aaron.
Aaron was kind of the guy responsible, and you as well, Gerard, for starting me on this sort of Instagram road, and publishing my work and getting my stuff out there. And just a shout out to him. I was doing some Elevate show, I believe, and he was kind of getting together with some pals. They were just going to cut some hair, and I didn't even know him. And he just wrote to me on Instagram. He says, "Do you want to cut hair together?" And it was like, kind of like some band members getting together for a jam. So I love that. I love what the network and what Hairbrain has really created, because it's allowed me to sort of connect with all these hairdressers and share with more people, really. So, thank you.
So now, does that work with over direction? Is everything combed back from the
Everything's
front?
being brought back again. I'm not using. There's not like this super stationary place. I'm kind of staying in and around the ear area as I do it. There'll be a little bit of freehand that I'll do just as I finish the cut off, specifically for her bangs.
Our frequent viewer, Nanette, is watching, and Nanette is wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how you started your career. Where did you go to school?
Okay, I was in high school, and I took it in like an adult day school. I was sort of switching high schools. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And hair was
So you didn't play with Barbies when you were a little...
I did, actually.
You did?
I totally did, but that's a different story,
Yeah.
too. I mean, I would have preferred G.I. Joes, but I think Barbies were what my neighbor had. We didn't have a lot growing up as kids, so we come from a pretty humble background, and
You took what you could get.
Took what we can get,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, I started in Toronto, which is home for me, and started at Vidal Sassoon.
We actually had some Canadians here wondering when it was Lila T, wondering if you'll be back in Toronto anytime soon.
He's got to invite me. Okay, so I'm just gonna go into the bang area here because I think this is also curly fringes are really in right now. They used to be a big no for me, but I think they're super cool. And Janice here wears an awesome one. So just a little bang lesson here.
It seems to me like we're at one of the most exciting times for texture since the mid '80s, really.
Well, I think it's just
we went
about
through
acceptance.
20 years of hair could not be anything but straight and full, straight with an iron wave, where we're actually really seeing real texture.
Yeah, I think that there's this whole thing about acceptance of what you have and not trying to change. I mean, that sort of goes with everything right now, which is really cool. So I'm just going to take that. I want to graduate this fringe. And so always just like a little pointer just to bring it down. I'm just going to go off the existing length that she has right now.
So is that kind of a square? Or are you just cutting straight up to the ceiling?
Totally square, but just going to give it a graduated effect. So what really happens is those other guys start to shrink up behind it.
Baby Mendoza is wondering about the section. It's rather a large triangle, so she's wondering why so far back.
So when you're looking at how far back, it's really based off of the person's forehead. And so when you, it's got a beautiful forehead, as do I. So when you look, I'm choking on my so when you're looking here, you got to sort of look at, from the jaw to the nose. This is our job. This is what we actually have to do, is look at people. So if we measure from like the nose to the jaw and then the nose to the bridge of the brow here and then from there to there, you can kind of see she's very even in these areas. You can almost kind of see where she balances out, and then as we get to the forehead, we can see we've got an little extra space. But this is what's so funny. But this is what hair. Yeah, and when you get a bang wrong, you've got a bang wrong because you've either pushed it too far forward, cut it too short, and it's now imbalancing the face. Right. So if she's going to wear her fringe really short and I don't take this far back enough, what ends up happening is it ends up looking like it looks sort of transparent in a way. It doesn't look thick enough, and then it will condense and sort of shrink her face.
Yeah, I think that was really beautifully explained, and you really show how, as a designer, you can really transform someone's features.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we don't do enough. I think we look at magazines, we try to put pictures on our people.
I'm going to make you look like so-and-so, but what about being the best version of yourself?
Exactly. And I love that as a starting place. I love when people bring in pictures. It makes me feel good, to know I've got a place to start or a place to communicate with. But, at the end of the day, everything you're doing is tailoring. So you're taking what someone has or is expecting and you're tailoring it to work with them. So bangs, your bobs, everything's just about tailoring here. So
I want to welcome everyone that's watching. I know lots of people are just joining us, and we are here in New York City. I'm Gerard Scarpese, co-founder of the Hairbrain community, here with my friend of well over 20 years, probably 25 years, Ricardo Dennis. We kind of started our careers together back in the day, and so amazing to see what he's done and how he's grown. And today he works as the global creative haircutting director for Veda, working on developing classes and shows and big events like Congress. I know one of the things you're really excited about is your core creative cutting class, and I know a lot of what you're teaching here comes from that, using the foundations in a unique way.
Well, I worked in Spain, in Madrid, and I worked behind the chair there as a stylist, and I felt that my clientele was amazing and passionate. When I first got there, I felt like everything was a little long hair and a little closed off in terms of.
Show us what you're using, Ricardo.
So this is, so I'm going to show you guys my sort of combo for Janice's hair here. I'm going to start off with some Brie Curly style prep. I'll move into some Brie Curly enhancers. I'll combine those together. I'm going to put a little bit of.
Oh, you gotta love the classic.
You gotta love the classic,
especially in humid New York City. You gotta have Confixor and curly hair.
This is kind of creating when you do curls, you gotta know it's about. You gotta have the right product. So there's no question about that. So this is going to kind of create the right environment for her curls to dry in. This is going to give me a little bit of hold. I will finish off probably with some leave-on conditioner. This stuff's amazing. That's a favorite to put in my own hair. And a new one that we got is our Rinseless Refresh. And this is actually mainly for like second day kind of curl, but I'm probably gonna use some because I'll do a little freehand, I'll dry and mess her hair up a little bit, then I'll just put a little bit of that to sort of get it back into
All right,
place.
so first the base with the Be Curly Style Prep, adding the moisture,
Yeah.
and then some of the curl cream.
Yeah. And so the main thing,
Were those cocktailed together or are they separate?
I'm gonna put them in separate and
Okay.
then for me, I like cocktailing, but I like the idea of knowing what's kind of gone on the hair in layers. Sometimes cocktailing can be a little too strong for me, but that's a preference, I think, for a lot of hairdressers. Her hair doesn't need a lot, it just needs a little bit of a couple different things. You can see I'm not wetting the hair down, so I kind of want the product, especially in these, she's got these little areas that tend to be a little drier, which is normal, especially around the front part of the hairline. Okay, and then we're gonna do our favorite by everybody, which is the Be Curly.
And that's more, it gives a little bit more structure to the hair. It's not just the leave-in conditioner.
No, it's like it can be considered like a curl intensifier.
Right.
I like it as a relaxer as well, so it kind of can do a little bit of both, I guess.
If you've been around the Veda world a long time ago, you can remember Be Curly and Hang
Oh my
Straight.
God, it's like
There were these two products. The one was to enhance curl, one was to make the hair straight. And all these years later, Be Curly's still one of the most popular products, I think. So any tips on applying to, I think sometimes people get afraid to really work with the
I think you
product.
got to be gentle. I think this is a mirror time. This is you're trying to make the hair sort of malleable. Like look at like some of the drier areas. I think some really great tips around like setting specific curls. She doesn't need that. Like honestly, she doesn't need that. What I'm gonna do is there's gonna be some like little dangly bits that I want to just approach just as it sort of like dries. She can have a quite an inconsistent curl pattern when it's long. But again, it'll be beautiful.
Now, was that Confixer?
That was some Confixer. And so we're just going to, and you'll see what I'm going to do here. Start to dry.
And that basically kind of, I always think of it as like putting a shell on top of the moisture. You put that, you're kind of like putting some crunch into the hair, literally. And then it sounds like you're going to loosen it up at the end with some of the finishing products.
Yep. I kind of love the effect. I also love just the sort of theatric as well. And so
I have to say, it smells wonderful in here. That's, again, if you're a big fan of Aveda, half of it is aroma. And of course, sustainability for the planet. Something that's obviously a big part of the Aveda mission.
So once it's, then I'll just sort of blast it, just a little bit of water. Right. That's where it's got my diffuser. And we're going to sort of start off with some sort of medium heat, medium setting. Okay. And so I want to sort of compact, and I want to allow the sort of silhouette of the curl. So you're going to see this get really short and compact, and then you'll see me stretch it out and bring out those curls.
So you're almost like using your hand like a board.
Yeah,
You're like pushing the curl into your head.
I have to give Antoinette Bienders credit for this. She actually showed me this sort of little styling technique where you just really compact the curl in. I think the scary thing, a lot of us do when we're drying curls is try to stretch them out so that the customer doesn't get too nervous about it getting short. And I had this one customer that I cut all the time, and I swear to you, every single time she walks out totally happy, but every single time she says to me, "This is way shorter than the last time." And when she walks out, there's never any mention of that comment, but there's always that like blow dry stage.
People have their quirks that they do all the time. Yeah, that's learning to work with clients.
Yeah, and like the way people see themselves, you kind of have to be strategic, not just thinking about the cut, but thinking about what's going to influence the wearer on feeling good. I've done great haircuts on people, and I'm like, this is amazing. But if she somehow saw her daughter, let's say, and she said, "Mom, my God, it's so short," that kind of ruins the whole setup for that cut.
Absolutely.
And so I always tell people, if you're creating a big change in the salon, I try to make other stylists, my team members and coworkers, aware of what's happening, so that they're able to come by and compliment my guest or back up what I'm doing. And I think salon work and working behind the chair is all about teamwork. So, if you're banging off someone's hair, you want someone to come over to Jennifer or Mrs. Smith and say, "Hey, Mrs. Smith, I just saw this, from over from my station, and I just wanted to come over and say that's looking amazing through the back."
Yeah, it's not just what's on the head, it's what's in the head.
But it's just like, think about how influential people's comments are.
Of course.
And so if you just cut someone's hair off, and you know it looks good, and you want her feeling super confident, but maybe the first person she's going to see is her insecure boyfriend or possible husband that could, possibly put a sort of a hole in that. So make sure you build your clients up.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of being a successful hairdresser. It's not being great with your hands. It's being great with the psychology of it. And also being comfortable with it, because for some of us, that stress can be so overwhelming.
Oh, totally.
And we can't handle it.
But think about what makes a successful hairdresser. It's not doing trims. Like, you literally have to be the person that's changing people. And that requires a lot of guts and this willingness to fail. And I believe that, like, if you're that person that's in the chair that people come to see specifically for change, you know what that does for you. You know how taking that chance just really allows for the advertisement, I think, of you as a hairdresser and as an artist.
And that's how you get referrals.
Great reputation, man.
Yeah, you can't get referrals off trims. No one says, "Oh, that quarter inch looks really so much better."
Don't say him who'll make your bangs look, it's really about being that person.
What do you think about, let's say you don't have a super brave clientele. What do you think about doing like models for free, doing a lot of transitions?
Do it all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's, clients are going to take a chance if they see or feel the confidence. And I think a lot of it sometimes comes because someone else has done it, maybe their friend. But I think building your reputation around change, especially because of the added Instagram and social media, now that people can see your work, you kind of have to be that. And, in your mind, if you think about, what kind of hairdresser you imagined you were going to be when you grew up. I pictured myself as this, person out there changing people's hair, high demand, not the comfortable one.
So how do you know when it's dry? Do you dry all the way?
I dry it all the way. I'm not I'll dry it and then dry it a little bit more. I don't want my clients walking out, 70, 80, 90% wet. I think diffusing is a service for me, so I want to diffuse it. I want to finish the look. I don't want to send her out saying, let nature do it.
I also always think of it like a set. If you put rollers in someone's hair and you leave it 10% damp, whatever you do is going to fall out. And it's the same with curl. I either leave it 100% damp and let nature take its course, or dry it 100%.
Yeah. I just want to go back to one of your, people who don't have a more limited clientele, because I did that. I had that. I was in Spain. I could totally relate to that. There was no short hair. The most creative haircut I did, I think, was a bob. But creativity is not about how much paint you can put on a board. It's about a statement that you're making with that person. So creativity could be anything. Creativity could be taking a client that's never changed their hair ever and putting a bang on them. And that's more creative than putting a mohawk on someone who gets a mohawk all the time. So kind of reevaluate the work side of it and think about, if you change someone, you get someone to cut their hair off, or wear their hair on a different side, that is creative. You're making an impact. You're changing. And the other part is, I always tell people, is like, don't underestimate, the power of a planted seed. But so often I just tell a client, have you ever thought about doing this? And then I'll follow up 6 or 7 more times on that person. But I won't just plant an idea that I don't want to do. I'll plant an idea that I really want to do on this person. And I'll make sure that I follow up on it. So that's important as well. Okay, so now I'm just going to turn it on to sort of high heat. I'd say we're at that like 90% dry now. And then just before I do any cutting, I'm going to blast it with cold air and allow the sort of shape to come out. If you had probably not such a great curl pattern, you could always sort of set the hair as well. So you can just see that, the profile that she's got right now.
Now, what are your opinions about color with curly hair? I know you specialize in hair cutting, but what would you talk about with a colorist?
She's got some really nice sort of highlights happening through here. I mean, I love adding depth to curls, so yeah, I'm totally into some color. I think it's such an individual. Just like that. I think it's such an individual thing about tailoring and customizing. Getting the right color, not doing something so obviously bleached all the time.
Lots of love coming in. The shape is drying in beautifully. Guys, if you're watching, stick around for a couple more minutes because there'll be some really important refining steps that are going to happen here. As Ricardo mentioned, it's about getting that shape in and then detailing it. So stick around a couple more minutes to see the beautiful finish here on Janice.
And do check out my model here, Janice. She's at Soul Thunder. She's like this super awesome up-and-coming musician here. She's kind of like bluesy, right? Kind of bluesy music. Incredible voice, amazing performer. Do check her out. She's like one of those super cool people here in New York. I gotta blast it one more time with some heat.
Now, you're a bit of a musician too, aren't you, Ricardo?
Yeah, I'm
you guys ever jam together?
No, she only plays with talent.
Yeah. All right, now for the big cold blast. And now the hair's dry, so the curls really set in, and you're just expanding it.
And I just love the way that looks.
Yeah. It's got that very raga texture to it right now.
Totally.
That's what I'm going for.
You are the inventor of raga. So you can just kind of see how this connection just helps to break up the silhouette. So generally what happens is I'll finish cutting her hair and then she'll get stopped because New Yorkers are all about stopping other people. Who does your hair? What's this? Love your look.
So you better give her some cards.
So yeah, that's
old school, but it still works if someone's going to stop you. Or you got to take their phone and like make them follow you on Instagram. Is that what you do?
Every time.
Yeah.
And then sends them to me.
Beautifully loosened up now. Excited to see these final few important moves.
Okay. Now it's all the Edward Scissorhand kind of stuff, right?
So going into a bit of freehand now. So no comb necessary.
No comb. Shake it.
And bake
Touch
it.
it. Looks great. And then so it's like approaching, you know, where you think the shape, you know, might sort of work against you, right? So you start going, right, okay, so let's have a look. Like in these guys here, I love what's happening here. I lied to you, I am gonna pull a comb out. And let's just go in with a sort of, just something to highlight that really nice curl there. And this is a wonderful tattoo there. I think one of the great things about working in New York is the girls with the tattoos. It's so cool. Thank you. Okay, and then we'll just, and so look at all that really beautiful stuff and how that sits.
And the way you're able to maintain that is by changing the angle on the
Yeah,
side. You
exactly.
kind of rotated your fingers out and
So
kept that
it's
corner.
like short, but it's not like naked.
So it's
you
kind
know?
of getting shorter
Yeah.
to longer, concave-ish on the sides.
And then just, I remember I used to be so terrible at curly hair, especially drawing it. Maybe I still am. But then what I would do is I would just cut all the curls I didn't like.
Yeah, I mean, I think you
Smooth
got
it out
you
that
got a
way.
great concept here. Dry it tight, get
Yeah.
it nice and defined,
Yeah.
shake it out a few times, and then do, as you said, your Edward Scissorhands. It's kind of, you know, if you've got a great shape, this is just going to customize all the little bits and bobs.
And then so the way I look at it is, you know, instead of just jumping to the other side, I'm just going to move to the next room. And so, you know, this is just the sort of freehand part. You know, we might even just shake that a little bit, get rid of some of these guys. They're a little weaker, allow the thicker ones to sit there, you know.
That length on the
Little-
fringe is just perfect. As I look at the screen here, the
Oh,
you know, you really made a beautiful choice there for Janice's face, which is what it's all about.
it's just... And so we're just twisting, and then you kind of break out so there's no like chunk with the curl.
So the benefit of the twist
It
is
just helps to like, it's like a texturizing, diffusing for the curl because there's no like hard snip. There's like a softness that runs all the way up to the edge of the hair. And then we can just come down and make sure that the silhouette is sitting upwards. Okay. And then, you know, knowing your cut and just knowing where the weight is, so like thinking about where that disconnected panel is, also helps out. Okay, let's just go through this other side now. And just
you know, and here, you know, you're fully committed. You're like, this is what the hair is, and I'm going to work with it. You're not
Yeah.
trying to change it. You're trying to really help it express itself.
Yeah, it's absolutely. You know, I think about, like, if you want someone wearing like a different shape, or like all of us as hairdressers trying to get people to wear something that's different than the day-to-day that we see in the salon or in Hollywood, it's really about taking the classics and putting twists and spins on them. You know, when you look at like clothing and fashion, you know, you can really relate a lot of the clothing still to the 20s and think about the fashion industry from that standpoint, and then think about how much it's changed and how much it actually hasn't.
And people can hairdressers can experience that with you in your new class. Is that
Well,
right?
that's kind of like the point of what we're talking about, is that creativity isn't just some like made up, you know, let's start from scratch. It's more about let's take what we've got and how can we reinvent what we're doing. You know, it's like a typical like white shirt or even a suit. you know, those are items that you update season to season because of the length, the cut, or even the color. So when you think about, you know, haircutting and clothing in that same sort of way, it's like, wait a second, people are only wearing what they recognize, understand, and what fits in today's sort of like function. So, you know,
I mean, generally anything that breaks out of that, people consider really horrendous for a long time.
A long time, and it's
and
really
it becomes part of an underground punk culture.
Exactly.
Until, you know, I mean, think about tattoos and piercing.
Think about
25 years ago.
What
you
makes
had to be a pirate?
Yeah, what makes a mohawk like commercial where the sides aren't taken off? You know, so there's always this sort of adjustment, and I think that, you know, when we think about where we want to be, I think sometimes people start their expression in such a place that's so unrelatable that's what makes it difficult. So, you know, and also just, you know, for people behind the chair, one of the things I get a lot in that class is people saying, Ricardo, I do the same thing day in and day out. And I think about musicians that have to sing the same song day in and day out. And it's like, you know, you've got to put on the best performance and think about if someone's literally requesting the same cut, that's a greatest hit. That's kind of like a compliment to you. So think about that when you do your work. Just don't do a same old job. Just do it like better than you did last.
Looking fantastic, Ricardo. Lots of love coming in, lots of fans. Really, really enjoying this and getting a lot out of how you're working with curly hair. I think a lot of people are excited to learn more about your class. Thanks, Wendy Pryor, for putting the link up here for people who are interested in attending. So it looks like we're pretty much getting to the finish here.
Pretty much it.
So any last important things you want to share with us?
I just think, you know, pay attention to the craft, have fun, and it's curly hair, it's summer. People are into wearing things that they haven't before. Take advantage of, I think, the new openness and creativity out there. I think there's lots of, you know, iconic models right now. They're wearing their hair short, lots of diversity and multicultural. So
if we see shorter hair and more texture, we'll be busier in the salon. Or maybe our cutting game can get up to where our color game is, and we can all make more money. So final product here.
Just a rinse. I love the color, and it smells really nice. So this is like a sort of second day product, but I'm using it.
This is pretty much brand new, right? The Rinseless Refresh.
Yep.
So that's something that people can use just if they don't want to shampoo their hair and they want to freshen it, or you can use it as like a finisher to put more moisture into the hair.
We all love water, so if anybody who's like go to the sink and just dip their hands in water and put that on their hair,
awesome.
That's kind of what that product really is. It's also amazing because it actually adds some hold, it refreshes your hair,
and actually
cleanses your hair as well.
Take this off, get a final look. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you to Aveda for supporting Hairbrain continually, helping us bring great education to all of our followers. Thanks, Ricardo. Always a pleasure hanging out with you.
Thank you, guys.
Janice, beautiful. Thanks, Courtney. Peace out, guys.